The Supreme Court's refusal to rehear a key immigration case dealt a setback to millions of undocumented immigrants hoping to stay in the U.S. legally. It also reflects the continuing difficulty of deadlock, in this case, the limitations of an 8-person bench. The issue of the immigration program's legality could yet return to the High Court, but one whose makeup is likely to be decided by the next president.
Okay, I brought a lead pencil.
12-year-old Victoria Bonilla, like many 7th graders, spends weeknights hammering away at her homework. Unlike her classmates, she worries her mom won't always be there to help.
I'm worried that they might take my mom away from me, which is really hard for a kid because, you can't live without your mom.
Victoria is an only child and a U.S. citizen, but she was born to a mother who came to the country illegally from El Salvador in 2004. The Bonillas live in Gaithersburg, Maryland, a Washington suburb where Ilaria works as a restaurant manager. She says she moved to the U.S. to escape domestic abuse, one of an estimated 4 million parents who would have qualified for legal status under a 2014 executive action issued by President Obama. The president's plan was blocked by a Texas federal judge last year, leaving families like the Bonillas in limbo. The court deadlocked 4-4 when it heard the case earlier this year, leaving the lower court's hold in place. And with the 9th seat vacant since Justice Antonin Scalia's death nearly 8 months ago, there is no resolution in sight. NewsHour regular Marcia Coyle covers the court for the National Law Journal.
This is such an important issue. It may well be that the court is willing to take another shot at it if it does have a 9th justice eventually.
I chose a serious man and an exemplary judge, Merrick Garland.
President Obama's nominee, Merrick Garland, chief judge of the D.C. Court of Appeals, has languished without a confirmation hearing since March, after the Republican Senate majority declared it was too late in the president's term to allow him a nomination.
The American people may well elect a president who decides to nominate Judge Garland for Senate consideration. The next president may also nominate somebody very different. Either way, our view is this: give the people a voice in filling this vacancy.
The conservative Judicial Crisis Network has spent more than $4 million opposing Garland's confirmation.
The Constitution gives the authority to choose the Supreme Court justices to the President as the nominator, and then to the Senate, which gives its advice and consent. And there's a lot of ways it can do that. It doesn't have to have hearings or votes on a specific schedule. And historically, 2/3 of the justices who have not been confirmed, who've been rejected by the Senate, it's been because they didn't get a vote.
All we're asking is for the Republicans to do their job. Now, Mitch McConnell set out, and he did it publicly. His #1 goal was to make sure Obama was not reelected. He failed at that miserably. Just like he's going to fail miserably here. We are going to have a Supreme Court justice. It's the right thing to do.
Michelle Jawando follows the Supreme Court for the liberal Center for American Progress.
The Supreme Court is supposed to be the final arbiter of the most difficult constitutional and statutory questions in our country. And if they can't make a decision to move us in the direction that the framers intended for us to move forward on, then we have a major problem.
It is also clear that the Scalia vacancy is not the only worry for those most concerned about the court's future.
If you look at the ages of the justices who are currently on the Supreme Court, the potential is very high that the next president would be able to fill not only 1 seat, but possibly as many as 3 and maybe even 4.
That makes Supreme Court appointments a campaign issue. 65% of registered voters told Pew Research this year that Supreme Court appointments are, quote, very important. 70% of Trump supporters said the same, compared to 62% of Clinton supporters.
One of the reasons this election is so important is because the Supreme Court hangs in the balance.
Even if you can't stand Donald Trump, you think Donald Trump is the worst, you're going to vote for me. You know why? Justices of the Supreme Court.
Even Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who called Trump a pathological liar during the campaign, told conservative radio host Glenn Beck that the future of the court drove his decision to endorse Trump last month.
Almost every one of our constitutional rights hangs in the balance. We have a narrowly divided court with Justice Scalia's passing. Just about every right we cherish is at risk of being lost.
That makes Hillary Clinton supporters like Michelle Joando nervous about what a Trump court would look like.
There are questions about if he even understands the constitutional contours of his role as president. There have been questions about, does he understand what due process is, or what constitutional protections are available to all Americans?
Whether the court is made up of 8 or 9 justices, that political divide could make it more powerful than ever. National Law Journal's Marcia Coyle.
The political polarization that we've been experiencing in the last 8 years has driven more organizations and people to turn to the courts for answers to some of the questions and issues that Congress has not been able to address. And that has raised the profile of the U.S. Supreme Court, and it also has made the court loom much larger in every American's life than it has been perhaps in recent decades.
And for Ilaria Bonilla and her daughter, this election's outcome will hit close to home. Will they stay or will they go?
We never know. So we're going to work and we never know if we can come back or not. So it's difficult.